Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishvavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so now we're on Śrī Tattva-sutra, chapter 4. We're beginning the Abhideya portion. Why is it so important for us to study these topics? Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. Because we already went through Śrī Īśopaniṣad last year. Why is it important to do it this way? Application.
We know our position, we know the goal, and we know also the process.
Okay.
How to apply.
Okay. But could we not have done that just from what we learned last year?
And then it looks like kind of jumping within the Sambandha there. It was not
Okay.
so
Right. So it was sort of
concentration
scattered through, but not. Okay. And what advantage does that give us now? Now that we're dealing with them separately, what advantage does that give us?
There can be some connections between these all scattered elements.
Okay.
Some commonality or relationships.
Okay. Good answers. The question was, since we're about to start the Abhideya section, I was asking the question of why is it important that we study Śrī Īśopaniṣad in this way, to divide it into Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana? You have an answer?
I think we should study everything.
Everything should be studied that way. Okay, why?
Because first we need to understand how everything, created. What is the nature?
Okay.
Substance, everything. I mean, every subject. And then we can understand, we should understand Abhideya, how have deal with this object, how they should apply for our goal. Like this.
Okay. So studying it this way, it makes it, I think what you're saying, studying it this way makes it clearer how to understand the true nature of things and the relationships, how to properly apply it so that we can reach a proper goal. Yeah. Okay. And as we mentioned, this is the language of the Vedas. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pointed out in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that all of the Vedas are just describing these three things and nothing else. So when we're describing Shastra, we're discussing Shastra. If it's outside of these three topics, we're actually not discussing Shastra, right? So say, for example, there's a new trend, a new management technique that's taking the world by storm, right? And of course, we have to deal with management. So we start talking about this new management trend, right? And so we're buying the books and we're holding seminars and we're discussing this topic, right? Maybe we're going to the seminars from the author himself so that we can learn more from this expert. And then we're also giving these same seminars within our community. Where does that fall? Sambandha, Abhideya, or Prayojana?
Again, question. I didn't understand fully.
Okay, so if there's you know how every so often a new trend comes up, a very popular phenomena. So let's say there's a very popular management technique that just came out. Some person who's expert in the field just wrote a book and he's traveling around the world giving seminars on how to effectively manage, right? And so the devotees then are going to these seminars, and then they're also offering these seminars to other devotees, right? Because it's something that's relevant, you know, we also manage. It's not that we don't manage. So, but does it fall under Sambandha, Abhideya, or Prayojana? Or maybe it's a mixture, or maybe it's something different. Yes.
Maybe it is Abhideya, how to earn money, for this example.
Maybe it's Abhideya, how to earn money.
Yes,
Okay.
or any Abhideya, how to do something.
My favorite part of your answer was maybe, because what does it depend on?
Yeah, it depends on what is stress more, how to do something, or how to understand. Like if it is talking about more about the about some stuff, or how to do something, or what should be our goal. Yeah,
Okay,
it can depend.
so that would depend on where it could fall into. Yeah, that makes
No,
sense.
actually, I think that Prayojana for most cases is pretty clear. Because people usually know what's their Prayojana, so these courses can speak or about Sambandha or about Abhideya.
Okay, interesting take. They can be talking about Sambandha or Abhideya, because everybody already knows the Prayojana,
Yes, they
right?
want
Which
to
is,
enjoy it.
what is it? What's
They
the
want to
Prayojana?
enjoy it.
Oh, they want to enjoy. So that's the Prayojana.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty clear.
And so when we're offering these classes in ISKCON, is that still the Prayojana, to enjoy?
Probably it
Probably.
shouldn't be.
Probably, but it shouldn't be. That's the perfect answer. Did you want to add something, Tulsi?
No, I was thinking if, like we learn this technique, now we have to put into practice ourselves.
Okay.
If we did, and this as a part of the practice we are teaching it to others, it can be like a video. But if we just went and we got the knowledge and we are transmitting the same knowledge that we heard, but we never put it into practice in our life, then it will be more like giving someone
Okay.
knowledge.
Okay. So it can be part of Abhideya, can be Sambandha. Okay. Anyone else have an idea? Because technically everything you guys said was right. If you're talking about just understanding the knowledge of how something works, you're talking about the theory of it, the relationship between you and what you want to achieve, right? That's Sambandha. So if you are an individual or a manager and you want to effectively manage your team, and so that's the relationship there, then yeah, we could be talking Sambandha and Abhideya in a way.
But it can be Prayojana also.
But it can be Prayojana also because?
Well, if your goal is just to absorb some knowledge and to give it to others, the more you're doing this, you achieve your goal. Your
Okay.
Prayojana.
Okay. What is the, are there different Prayojanas offered in the Vedas? There was a no head shake, there was a 2 yes head shakes.
No, it was no.
No head, okay, 2 no head shakes and a yes head shake, and an indifferent no answer.
No,
You don't know, okay, that's fine. Why did you shake your head no?
I mean, If someone brings some technique, not based on the Shastra, it will be can be useless.
So maybe it doesn't even fall under any of these.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why did you shake your head no when I said, are there more than one prayojanas in the Vedas?
Vedas have only one goal, to bring us to Krishna consciousness.
Can you quote me a verse that tells me that?
Vedas, Sarvaya, Veda.
Right. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Of all the Vedas I am to be known. That is the only prayojana, right? Of all of the Vedas. So in our terms, when we're talking about the devotees, we'd only take Vedas. Because if we're not referring to the Vedas, Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Adi, Panchashtra, Vidimvina, well then what does that mean? What's going to be the result if we're not referring to the Vedas? Finish that verse.
Disturbance.
Unnecessary disturbance in society, right? So then it's the only goal, right? There may be, we may think that there are goals that they're sub goals to get to our ultimate goal, but really the ultimate goal, the actual prayojana, right, is to understand Krishna, right? So when you were shaking your head, yes, were you talking about some sub-goals? Because in order to attain Krishna, we also have to, maybe do our duties properly. That's also, you can call that a sub-goal. That's what you're referring to.
Svarga or moksha or like different, they're not the ultimate goal, but there are some goals given as
Stepping stones, good, yeah, exactly. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talked about that stepping stone principle in detail in the Sambandha chapter. So, if the goal of these seminars, as Radhakrishna Prabhu pointed out, is to enjoy, then is this actually our prayojana as devotees?
I think that actually to generalize all living beings, their prayojana in a nutshell is to be happy. But in material world, there is this misconception that happiness is only derived from enjoyment.
Yes.
And actually, like, can be interpreted wrongly, but in general, I think our prayojana is to be happy. But the question is how we can be happy.
So Radhakrishna Prabhu brings up a point that we were discussing yesterday, which is amazing, because he wasn't even here yesterday, but he actually understood what we were talking about. We were saying that the living entity, and we were talking about it Friday also, the living entities, the characteristic nature of every living entity is knowledge, and their inclination is love. Means inclination is love means everybody wants to enjoy, right? But we found out the last 2 days that this love, we can either have the genuine form of the love directed at Krishna, which then becomes natural, spiritual, and it'll bring the highest bliss. And then if we place our love, and this is Sutra 17, place our love in that which is not supreme, so anything but Krishna, then it's artificial, false, material, temporary, and it'll bring suffering, because we'll expect it to be actual ananda, but it can't be, because it's the reflection. And so then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was talking about how this genuine love, when we direct it toward different things, it takes different forms, like greed, or lust, or kindness, or compassion, gratitude, right? That was toward the benefactors. And what was the other one? That was up here. Affection towards family members, right? Gratitude. So depending on how we see it. So Radhakrishna Prabhu is absolutely correct. We're looking to be happy. In other words, we're looking to put our love in the proper context, which is toward Krishna. So we can have that meeting amongst devotees about how to utilize these management tactics to actually get to our proper goal, which is to serve Krishna properly, right? We can do that. if we aren't careful, we may, for example, spend too much time on the details of the new management tactic and lose sight of what our actual goal is. We might think that, no, let's just talk about the goal of keeping our temple financially, viable. And that's all we're talking about, right? But if that's the platform we're working on, then A, we're relying on our own karma. So chances are it's not going to work unless we're actually managers. And B, if we're not making that connection to Krishna, even that stage, even though we're trying to keep the temple afloat, even though it's technically devotional service, since we're not actually making that connection properly, then it's not going to help us very much, right? And also, we don't really need new management tactics. Management tactics are also given in the Vedas, how to properly deal with everything, right? It's there. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't learn from other situations. Say someone is coming from this background, right? The guy that wrote that book, let's say he gets a book, Śrīla Prabhupada's book, and he says, oh, yeah, I like this. And he starts coming around to the temple and he sees, oh, well, you guys are actually, you may need some of my help as far as management goes. I want your help as far as spiritual connection because that's what I've been looking for my whole life. But I can help you in this regard because it's my nature and I can do that, right? So then, of course, since it's his background, he can explain it in such a way that's connected to Krishna if he can also understand, Krishna. And devotees can do that too. But the question would be then, why look for it anywhere else than from the source? Everything's in the Vedas, right? So the reason why it's very important for us to understand these topics, Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana, is that sometimes we're engaged in something that we think is devotional service, but we're actually not regarding our true prayojana, right? And we're not understanding what our actual relationship is, the sambandha. And so therefore, whatever action we're doing isn't really going to be our abhideya. It's going to be an action, but it's not going to be going toward what our goal, what we want our goal to be, right? So when this love so we talked about how knowledge and love can both be inappropriately assigned, right? If it's assigned to Krishna, then it's appropriate. If it's assigned to anything but Krishna, then it's inappropriate. And so we get improper goals. So let's go through a few examples here. Say there's a devotee. He's lived in a temple for 3 decades. He knows the philosophy very well. He can quote you verses that are pertinent to any question that you could ask him. He engages in service every day. He's steady. He doesn't miss his pujari service or cooking service or whatever his service is. But he's starting to lose that inspiration. There's something missing, right? What do we do if that devotee comes to us and tells us the situation?
We need to understand what is their goal.
Okay.
Then we need to understand how they living.
How they're
Living. I mean,
living. But so the first thing you said is we have to understand what is their goal. So means
what they doing to achieve their goal.
right. Okay. So the first thing that you observed is that the weakest part of those three was the prayojana, because they have the sambandha, the knowledge, at least to some extent, and they're performing the activity faithfully, but somehow the inspiration isn't there. So yeah, remind them of the prayojana, and also there probably needs to be an adjustment on the sambandha, right? Because if we actually understand the relationship, not just know it, but fully understand the relationship, then that abhideya will be much more dynamic. Good. So he understood that of the three, one of them didn't have so much attention paid to it. So he examined that, but then brought it back to sambandha, because that also needs to be addressed in order to properly understand what that goal is, and then to get that inspiration back. Very good. All right. Now another devotee. They just came to Krishna consciousness. They're very new. They are convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are not convinced that the process that you're telling them they have to follow is the actual process. They want to know why. I don't want to just do something mindlessly. You're telling me to do something, but I don't know. I don't see what the connection is. I accept that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, but I don't understand why sweeping this floor is actually going to help me go back to Godhead. You answered last one, so someone else has to do this one. Yes.
It looks like they don't understand. They understand that Krishna is the supreme,
Yeah.
but they don't understand the relationship between them and Krishna.
Okay.
It's sambandha.
Right.
From this prayojana will come. Abhideya will also.
Right. Good. So they have to get some knowledge of the relationship so they can see why that is actually the proper abhideya. Right. Good. Let's say. Oh, okay. Here we go. Let's say there's a devotee, knows the philosophy very well, can quote it. And they understand that Krishna is the ultimate goal. But the philosophy that they're quoting specifically is from Chaitanya Charitamrita and Nectar of Devotion, the topmost philosophies, where it says that sadhana bhakti, the result of sadhana bhakti, will actually just get you to Vaikuntha. But the result of raganuga bhakti is that you go to Goloka Vrindavan. So they know they want to go to Goloka Vrindavan. So they will not engage in sadhana bhakti for fear of being trapped in Vaikuntha. What say we to this devotee? Tulsi Prabhu or Radha Krishna? You're the only ones that didn't go.
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay. Tulsi.
Well, we can, maybe one thing we can tell him is that the danger is that he may not go to Vaikuntha, that he will go to the subterranean hellish planet.
Okay. That's an interesting preaching tactic.
Approach.
Do we think that's going to inspire them to now follow sadhana bhakti?
Well, we can explain to him that theoretically he may know about all these higher levels of bhakti, but in order to go there, he cannot, as we said, he needs a stepping stones, so he cannot just jump from 1 to 10.
Okay.
So gradually he has to go, and the gradual process given by the acharyas is you start from 0 and then you go through sadhana bhakti.
Okay.
You advance progressively through sadhana bhakti, and then you can become qualified to practice raganuga. And we can even quote from Nectar of Devotion that qualification to practice raganuga is anartha nivriti. Your heart should become pure from anarthas, and only then you can practice raganuga.
Yeah. So those of us that actually read these books in full context understand that this theory that I spouted out is completely ludicrous. Doesn't make any sense. But there are a lot of aspiring devotees who hold this opinion. And so it's important for us to understand. So as you pointed out, their abhideya is all sorts of wonky, right? So in order to address that, you have to bring them back to Sambandha, show in the same books that they're quoting how it shows that in order to get to that platform, first you need to take these stepping stones. Because otherwise, what do you think? You're just going to wake up one day and instead of being attached to watching movies and drinking beers with your friends, you're going to all of a sudden wake up and want to brush Krishna's hair, right? All of a sudden, you'll just be spontaneously attracted to service. So we can do that. And by the way, when I was saying drinking beers with friends, I didn't mean non-alcoholic beers. I meant like some of these people that hold these opinions are actually drinking beers because otherwise they feel that they would be pretenders. If I follow sadhana bhakti, that means I'm going against my own nature. And that's not right. We should follow our own bliss, right? So these are some of the, so each of these situations, we understood where there was a weakness or where there was a misapplication in these three, Sambandha, Abhideya, or Prayojana. Then we brought it to another one of those three, an appropriate one that will strengthen the other one, right? So it serves it, backs it up so that we can actually bring it to the proper goal, right? So understanding these Shastras, Śrī Īśopaniṣad, and also Bhagavad Gita, that we found in Shai's leads in the morning. By understanding this, as I mentioned in the beginning of this course, it sharpens our instruments so that we can use them more effectively and more properly, right? So we don't have to go to seminars on how materialists manage more effectively, right? Because we have all the tools right here. And if we pay attention to them in the language that it's presented, and we can understand, oh, this is how this is, this is why this goes like this. When we read Srila Prabhupada's purports, we can see him mention these without pointing out, this is Sambandha, this is Abhideya, this is Prayojana, right? So we can see how he goes between different ones, and where in different situations he'll put more emphasis on one and more emphasis on another, right? And so once we see that, once we observe it, we can start to understand when we're preaching or coming in contact with different types of people, what we can focus on according to how the Shastra does it and according to how the acharyas do it, right? So it's important for us to note this so that we can assess whether we're actually talking about the Vedas through these three, Vedic language through the Vedas, or if we're talking about just materialism. If the goal isn't to serve Krishna, right, then we at least have to say, okay, what you guys are discussing now, that's a sub-goal, but let's not lose sight of the actual goal, because if we do, none of this is going to work, right? We don't have the karma for it to work, right? We're not managers, right? So we can manage on behalf of Krishna if we were given that service, but we have to maintain that connection. We don't put more value in the author of some book that says, I will make you millions of dollars if you just follow what you read, right? No, we follow Krishna, we follow Srila Prabhupada. And if this guy, has a few tidbits of advice that will help us become more effective in managing for Krishna, and we keep that focus, then yeah, sure, it could help. But we could also get that same help straight from the Vedas. So it's the more we understand this in the language of the Vedas, in the language of the acharyas, same thing with Panchanga Nyaya, the more we can identify it when we're reading these purports, the more we can identify it. Oftentimes when Srila Prabhupada is writing a purport, he'll paraphrase different verses from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. When we can pick up on these, we can start seeing the connections better, right? And then we can actually start understanding fully. And so the more we study, then the easier this process becomes. And so this is another way to see. So like I said, we could do it through Panchanga Nyaya. We can do it through Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. We could do it in terms of Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva. We could do it in so many different ways to see how the acharyas are explaining, and it all has to do with Krishna, right? And so these are important tools for us to perfect, so that not only do we advance more naturally, but we can also help others advance more naturally. And we can identify, what is the actual issue here, right? We see some problem, we can actually analyze, okay, what's the issue? And we all just did that. We saw that, okay, this particular aspect is weak, but in order to strengthen that, we have to go back to this one, build that up, and then, like that. So this is why it's important that we go through these Shastras in this way, because Śrī Īśopaniṣad in Bhagavad Gita, everything is there. We can just keep reading it over and over again, right? Everything is there in our philosophy. So if we go through it in these different ways and understand it completely, then when we go to study Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to pick up on these very, very important ways that we can learn from these different devotees that are in the Bhagavatam how to apply Krishna consciousness in our lives without trying to work through, as I called them in the beginning, these Bhagavad Gita level doubts. And by the way, I forgot to make the disclaimer early on. When we do get to Srimad Bhagavatam, if you still have Bhagavad Gita level doubts, you can still ask the questions. I'm not trying to say that once we get there, nobody should ask such things. Wherever we are, that's the questions we should ask. But when we do it this way, there'll be fewer of those doubts, which leaves more room for the actual application of the philosophy. And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for, to show us how to apply this philosophy in our life. It's not meant to convince us that we should surrender to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita does that. Śrī Īśopaniṣad does that, right? Srimad Bhagavatam shows us through the examples of so many elevated devotees how we are to live our lives, how we're to pray, how we're to forgive, how we're to accept providence, how we're to do so many things, right? And we won't necessarily learn those lessons if we're still having doubts on whether or not we should actually surrender to Krishna and what that even looks like. Okay, so now we start chapter 4 of Śrī Tattva-sutra. Are there any questions on what we just talked about? Okay. So chapter 4 of Śrī Tattva-sutra, after a half hour of dissertation. Strangely enough, this is called Sambandha Prakarana, even though we're talking about the Abhideya now. The relationship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual spirit souls. Of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur will point out then why that also refers to the Abhideya. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's introduction to this chapter. In order to show the way the individual spirit souls who were described in the Chit Prakarana chapter may attain the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so referring to the Sambandha and the Prayojana, who is perfect, complete, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. In the beginning of this, the 4th chapter, the author describes devotional service, which is Abhideya, and the natural and eternal relationship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and individual souls. So here, Abhideya is also very much related to Sambandha, because of the nature of the relationship, we will act accordingly, right? So the devotional service is based on that relationship. And of course, it's also based on Shastra. Otherwise, it's an unnecessary disturbance in society. Sutra 31. Bhakti Purananurati Pare. Devotional service means unwavering love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unwavering love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What happens if it's wavering?
It's not complete.
Okay.
It's the same thing. Like sometimes it's given the example of green mango and fully ripened mango.
Okay.
So both are mangoes, but there is a difference.
Okay. Good. And then also referring to what we were talking about yesterday, when that love is wavering, or sometimes it's focused on the right thing, sometimes it's focused on the wrong thing. It's focused on the wrong thing, it's showing up as a material quality, and therefore it's binding to the material world. Right? So to whatever extent we are connected in our love to Krishna, that's the progress we'll make. And to whatever extent we're misplacing that love in the material world, then to that extent we're also bound to the material world. But devotional service means that there's no more misplacement of this love. It's all properly situated, established in Krishna. So then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, the indivisible and unalloyed love for the Supreme Lord, who is superior to the principles of sentience and non-sentience, right? Superior to chit and achit, is called bhakti. So indivisible and unalloyed. It's not put anywhere else, it's not divided, and it's not mixed with anything else, it's unalloyed. The distinction between love and knowledge is that dry realization is the knowledge, and the delicious realization is love. Right? The distinction between love and knowledge is that dry realization is the knowledge, and delicious realization is the love. Jnana is a form of sentience, but the raga is a form of bliss. So when we use our knowledge and we try to pursue material things, it's dry and it's not what we're actually searching for. But raga, when we actually put that knowledge toward what is real, what's eternal, then that's the form of bliss. Thus, the transcendentally blissful jiva is endowed with jnana and bhakti, knowledge and love. Jnana is the characteristic form of the jiva, and bhakti is the inclination of the jiva. Same thing, the form and the inclination, knowledge and love. When the jiva develops his tendency of love indivisibly applied toward the Supreme Lord, so not anywhere else, unwavering, indivisible, and unalloyed, that state is called liberation, right? Liberation because you're no longer bound to the material world, because all of your love and all of your knowledge is placed with Krishna as the center. Continuing, all these sentient objects are attracted by one another, and all of them are naturally attracted by the Supreme Lord. The attraction between sentience itself is the love. The individual attraction between the sentient objects does not hamper their fullest love toward the Supreme Lord. So again, that refers back to what we were talking about yesterday.
Can you explain the word sentient?
Sentience. So sentient means able to perceive. So that's chit. And then the non-sentient objects, that's the achit. Matter, spirit. Matter. Good. So when this says that the attraction between sentient objects does not hamper their fullest love toward the Supreme Lord, it doesn't mean that, okay, we're sentient objects here in the material world and we're attracted to each other, and that doesn't hinder our love towards the Supreme Lord, right? So then we can just enjoy it together. That's not what that means. What it means is if we actually have this love indivisibly applied, unwavering, and unalloyed to Krishna, then we also have relationships with other devotees who also have their love placed in Krishna. And that attraction, that affection that we have toward the devotees in service to Krishna, that's natural. It doesn't hamper that. But as soon as it becomes a material thing, if we're enjoying those relationships on a material basis, then that does hamper it, right? Because otherwise, if we think that, because it says here, love has to be indivisible, unalloyed, indivisibly applied toward the Supreme Lord. Therefore, I can't apply any love toward anything else. Therefore, no relationships, right? Don't come near me. I don't want to talk to you. That's not what this is saying. What this is saying is, as long as that love is for the Supreme Lord, then anyone else who also is expressing that love to the Supreme Lord, we can interact with and grow together, right? That's why sadhu sangha is so important. And then on the level of Madhyama Adhikari, it's important that we can understand to what extent each living entity is directing their love toward God or toward themselves, because then we understand how to preach to them. Right? But that's on the level of Madhyama, because the Uttamadhikaris, they just see that everyone's spirit soul, and they treat everyone the same, right? And the Kanishthadhikaris, they only understand, them and God, and they don't see anything in between. So there's no need for them to make any distinction. But so this can be a tool to understand, but we also have to understand it in full so that we don't become impersonalists and think that, no, the only relationship is with Krishna, so the devotees can go and, take a hike. At the same time, we have to understand that just because someone is a devotee, it doesn't mean whatever affection we're showing them is on the transcendental platform. We can also be very much materially attached to a fellow Vaishnava. So all of these things have to be properly understood. And when we understand them in terms of Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana, there's less of a chance that we'll become confused, right? So Peter asked a question this morning where he was talking about sometimes something comes up, and do you just take that as Krishna's mercy? Because maybe it's actually a test of Maya. So do I accept it, like as part of my quota or something like that, in using Krishna service, or do I reject it because it might be is that what you were asking? Sort of? I put my spin on it because I had the same thing when I actually had a prayer to Krishna to help me to distinguish his mercy from Maya's test, because if Maya's testing you and you think it's Krishna's mercy and you take it, all of a sudden, oh no, I made the wrong decision, and now you have to live with it for the rest of your life. It's terrible. Or conversely, you think this is, that's a test of Maya, so I better reject it. But it was actually Krishna's mercy. Oh no, I missed out. Right? But that's not how it works, right? If Krishna is giving you mercy, and the delivery mechanism of his mercy, if you think that that's a test of Maya and therefore reject it, you did the right thing because you were being cautious because you thought maybe that's... So Krishna will give you that mercy in another way. Don't worry. If you deserve Krishna's mercy, you'll actually get a little bit more, because he saw that you based your decision on, the best knowledge you had, and since you thought it was Maya, you rejected it. Right? And conversely, if Maya is testing you, but you're confused and you're thinking, this is Krishna's arrangement, so I must accept it, right? Then Krishna sees that as well, right? And so these things aren't like, in the material world, we have a tendency to think, this is bad, this is good. If I accept this, it's bad. If I accept this, it's good. But it's the consciousness that's important, right? So the way we accept a thing is way more important than the thing itself, right? So if we just base all our decisions on, something's being presented to me. Is this favorable to my devotional service or not? And if I determine that it's not, then I reject it, then I made the right choice, even if it was something that I could have technically used in Krishna service, and vice versa, right? Yes?
Just regarding this, if we are attached to something, and afterwards try to convince ourselves that this is Krishna's mercy because it came, so this is different in case, right? Also.
Yes, that's different. So if you actually realize that you're materially attached to something and then try to justify that, oh no, it was Krishna, then we're trying to convince ourselves that our material attachment is actually properly placed love. Right? But if we see it in this way, the way that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was pointing out, but it's good because if we're analyzing it like that, we understand that we're attached, and we understand that, we value Krishna's mercy, but we don't value the other thing. If we remain sincere, ultimately we're going to make the right decision. And if it is truly bad for our devotional service, then we'll, in time, be able to easily reject it. And we won't be missing out on anything.
Question, basically grammar, because I'm not sure about the English grammar here. It means that it says, are naturally attracted by the Supreme Lord, means they are attractive for the Lord, or Lord is attractive for them?
They're attracted to the Lord. The attraction is coming from, It is, yeah, it is strange grammar though. Yeah, that's what it means. So we have to see the complete picture of this, right? And the best way to see the complete picture is to analyze it in the language of the Vedas. And when we do that, we can know whether our love is actually love because it's focused on the Supreme Lord, or if it's gratitude because it's reciprocating with someone who is our benefactor, or if it's affection because we're reciprocating with a family member, or if it's kindness because we're reciprocating with other living entities, but we're only serving their material needs, not their spiritual needs, or if it's greed because we're, just taking that wealth, right? So we understand if the love is actually focused on the substance or the shadow, then we'll see, okay, it's okay. So we can express that love toward Krishna through other Vaishnavas, right? Cooperatively acting to, get to Krishna. That's the point of sadhu sangha. So that's very important to understand. And again, it's very easy to misunderstand it both ways, yes.
What will be the difference if you cooperate with some Vaishnavas because you understand Krishna wants you to cooperate with the Vaishnavas, or you cooperate with some Vaishnavas because you are attached to be with them and cooperate with them, but the best thing to do is to service together for Krishna.
Okay. What level of that attachment is because they inspire you, and what level is it because there was some material attraction, not necessarily physical, but qualities that you wish you had, for example. So you have to determine what is that attraction based on, right? And so if some of it is based on, it's actually connected to the service, right? I see that devotee is very humble, and I know that I'm not very humble. So if I associate with this devotee, I can become more humble through understanding how they. So even if we have just 10%, that's 10% of our attraction to the devotee, and the others are, but they're also a very good mridanga player. And the reason I want to play mridanga well is because the really good mridanga players get all the cutest wives, right?
Is that a fact?
It could be. No, I don't know if it's a fact or not, but if it's our conception, and that's why we want to. So if it's 90%, I want a pretty wife, and 10%, I want to be more humble. We fan that spark of the 10%, and hopefully that grows. The 10% grows to more than that, and then our reasons for wanting to play mridanga go from impressing the ladies to
pleasing Krishna, right?
So you work on your motivation, purify.
Right. We have to assess whether our love is actually toward the substance or the shadow. Where it's for the substance, we want to water that as much as possible, cultivate it, right? Fan that spark. Where it's not, we want to try to withdraw. It's called retraction. We're going to come to that very soon, right? And so when we do that, when Krishna sees that we're sincere and that we're actually cultivating the good part of the relationship and trying to retract from the not so pure part of that relationship, then he rewards us accordingly, right? So it doesn't mean you shouldn't learn how to play mridanga. It means that your motive for learning how to play mridanga should be purified instead of impressing the ladies to please Krishna, right? So sometimes, until that motivation is changed, you should actually not yet become expert. But other times, it's best, okay, if that's your only attraction to the Krishna consciousness movement is to become a really good mridanga player, and the motives aren't necessarily pure, go ahead, become an expert, and hope that through playing kirtan, you will be purified, and then gradually, then you'll play for the proper reason. So sometimes you just do it because it is the only bit that's connecting you. But other times there are other things that can connect you. So you want to focus on those, and then in time you can deal with these other things, right? Good, thank you. Okay, so Sutra 32. Tasya svarupam palam upayashcheti. As per the bonded and the liberated conditions of the jivas, bhakti can be divided as the end and the means, respectfully. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, Bhakti is the unalloyed function of the jiva. The individual spirit souls are of two kinds, the conditioned souls and the liberated souls. And the devotional service they perform is also of two kinds, phala bhakti, so the fruit of bhakti, and that's the devotional service as a goal, and upaya bhakti, devotional service as a means to attain the goal. The liberated souls engage in phala bhakti, which is the same as prema bhakti, right? So it's already the fructified version. Prema bhakti, the perfect stage of love for Lord Krishna. The conditioned souls engage in upaya bhakti, which is the same as sadhana bhakti, and which is the means by which one attains the goal of phala bhakti, right? So engaging in sadhana bhakti, a conditioned soul then becomes purified and can then properly attain prema bhakti. So that also helped answer one of our questions earlier, right? The one devotee who quoted philosophy and understood the ultimate goal, but he didn't agree upon the means by which one can attain that goal. So this also helps explain that in the conditioned state, that's what we have to do. We have to engage in sadhana bhakti. And that brings us to phala bhakti. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, by the systematic performance of determinative and causeless upaya bhakti, sadhana bhakti, ultimate devotion will be attained by the devotee in the form of transcendental service of the Supreme Lord. It is said that ghee equals long life. This means that by eating foods cooked in ghee, one attains a long life, as ghee and long life are equated. In the same way, sadhana bhakti is called devotional service because it leads to the final goal, the attainment of prema bhakti. Everybody understand the connection there? Mm-hmm. In Bhagavad Gita 9:14, the Supreme Personality of Godhead explains, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination and bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. In this way, chanting japa, offering obeisances, and other activities of sadhana bhakti are described. In Bhagavad Gita 18:52 through 55, the Supreme Personality of Godhead again explains, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, and who controls the body and the tongue, and is always in trance, and is detached, who is without false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and who does not accept material things, such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Right, so it's talking about the process and the goal. In the Narada Pancharatra, in the midst of a description of unwavering devotional service, Lord Sadashiva explains, these auspicious, blissful, and unselfish actions bring direct service to Lord Hari. In the next sutra, the author, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, describes the truth that pure devotional service is directed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead alone. Sutra 33. Phala bhakter nanyad angam ekatvat svata siddhatvac-ca. The ultimate bhakti, or phala bhakti, the fruit bhakti, is devoid of any other limbs because of its exclusively unalloyed and absolute character. So pure unalloyed devotion. Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, Phala bhakti has no other divisions or limbs. Unalloyed love alone is its nature. Phala bhakti has no separate subdivisions because it has a single undivided nature, and because consisting of activities of passionate love for the Lord, it is naturally perfect. In these ways, it is not like sadhana bhakti. Knowledge is the very form of the liberated soul. So again, this is being repeated. The form is knowledge. And the soul's inclination is the love-natured bhakti. So again, the inclination and the form, knowledge and love. Therefore, jnana cannot be part of bhakti. Vairagya means absence of material attachments, but since there is no love included, it cannot be part of the love-natured bhakti. Thus, the conclusion is that jnana and vairagya are necessary associates of bhakti, but they are not parts of bhakti. So this is an important point that we have to understand, because we have these quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam and elsewhere that when one engages in devotional service, jnana and vairagya come naturally, right? But there's another statement, I think it's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or maybe Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's saying that eventually, this knowledge and detachment are good in the beginning, but eventually you actually leave them behind and you focus on bhakti. So one time I was giving class somewhere, I won't say where because it might refer to who came up with this topic, but someone made this argument. No, you're talking about jnana and vairagya, but these things, they're only important at the beginning. They don't have much importance to us now. And then some senior devotees were kind of looking puzzled at why someone would say something like that. He was actually quoting Shastra, so it was fine. But in the context, it didn't make so much sense. They were saying, but doesn't it say in Srimad Bhagavatam that when you engage in bhakti, these things come automatically? So why are we all of a sudden trying to say that, they're not important? So here, Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur is pointing out that they are necessary associates of bhakti, right? In other words, you're not actually following bhakti if your knowledge isn't awakening and you're becoming detached from the material world. But they're not parts of bhakti, right? They're necessary associates, but not parts, because bhakti is pure. It doesn't have anything else that's connected to it. So these things are necessary. They're assistants, right? And you have to have them in order to properly be engaged in bhakti. Because if you're attached to anything else, or if your knowledge is, on material topics, then you can't have pure bhakti, right? So this is a very important thing for us to understand, because otherwise we may be confused when we're reading through Shastra and we hear these different viewpoints on what jnana and vairagya can actually offer, what their relationship is to bhakti. So this is the conclusive truth of the relationship between jnana and vairagya and bhakti. Did you want to add something?
There's this verse from Bhagavatam, Tat Shadana Munio, Yuktaya, Bhakti Shruta Grihitaya. The self-realized sage, and then just find it. Armed with knowledge and initiation.
The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta.
Very good. There is another quote from Śāstra-cakṣuṣā where Śrīla Prabhupada explains that bhakti develops in pursuance of Vedanta philosophy. He's taking the point that the devotee should not be neglectful to study the books. So Prabhupada says bhakti develops in pursuance of Vedanta philosophy because only then it is factual and steady. If it's not based on knowledge, then it's probably it's sentimental. And also jnana by itself, it's also usually we take it as sometimes we take it as impersonal jnana, but not necessarily jnana. Baldev Bhushan says that jnana is that bhakti is also jnana, but it's special type of jnana. It's knowledge about the absolute about Bhagavan, about Krishna. So it's not a bad thing to have knowledge about Krishna. This knowledge is different from the personal dry jnana that we don't want to deal with. Knowledge about Krishna is different. It's actually part of bhakti. It's practical.
Yeah, that's what Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur was pointing out earlier when he was talking about knowledge and love, how they can either be placed in the material world or they can be placed in spirit. Yeah.
I was just thinking, like some example, let's say you have relationships with someone and you go to him and you start explaining how you are very detached and you're not engaged with anybody else and you don't want to be with anybody else. And then you explain how you know how nothing else can make you happy, and you explain how actually you have knowledge, the person that you are very attached to, what he likes, but you never do anything. So you are very detached from anything else, and you know what will make the person that you're very attached to happy, but you never do anything about it. I was thinking this is like something like when bhakti is separated from jnana and vairagya. You may have jnana, you may have vairagya, but then there is no love there because there is no actual relationship.
In other words, there is no sense of possessiveness of Krishna. When there is no this sense of possessiveness, then the maximum is neutral, shanta. When there is possessiveness, this is my master, then the real active service. But if there is no possessiveness, and the jnana is there, they don't want this. This is the thing that they don't want. They don't want to get entangled with anybody, even with Krishna.
Like, can you imagine you have relationship with a woman and you go every day and 100 times you explain to this woman how you don't want to be with any other girl. And this is the only thing you do. That you never tell her I love you, I'll buy you flowers, I'll buy you a car, I'll buy you a house. No, you never do anything. The only thing you do is you just go and you explain how detached you are and how you don't want to be with anybody else.
This will last probably one day.
It has to be with positive effect as well. Yeah. And so the main point we usually talk about is we don't want to cultivate these separately. So there are lots of good qualities in devotional service, but if we focus on cultivating them independently from the Vedas, like we were talking about at the very beginning of this class, if the goal actually isn't to please Krishna, then we're missing it. We're missing the point. But if we just try to please Krishna, then automatically all these good qualities will come. That's in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. All the good qualities of the Devatas automatically become present in those who are engaged in devotional service. So the one Bhagavatam verse I was thinking of, the other one was Jnana and Vairagya, is 127 Vasudeva Bhagavati bhakti-yoga prayojita janatya-shu vairagyam jnana chayara vikakam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Right? So they come along with bhakti, and as Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur says here, they're necessary associates of bhakti, but they're not parts of bhakti, because bhakti is pure. And then the other quote I couldn't find, but I think it's coming up, where it says, you know, it's the quote that talks about in the beginning, knowledge and attachment are important, but I couldn't find it, but I think it's coming up, and if not, I'll look it up for Thursday. But yeah, it's important for us to understand this, because otherwise we have this term that we hear sometimes, different shlokas for different folks, right? Means, you know, yeah, that's just, you know, you prefer to see things that way, so you quote your shloka, and I prefer to see things this way, so I'll quote my shloka. But no, both shlokas have value, and you have to understand both of them and how they simultaneously exist, and they're not contradictory, right? Because if we just say, different slopes for different folks, we could do that for different sampradayas. Like if there's another sampradaya.
I've never heard this.
You never heard of this?
In American.
It's a play on, there's an American saying, different strokes for different folks. So I heard it from Naveen Nir, who's not American. He said different strokes for different folks. But yeah, this isn't our actual position. Unfortunately, it's the position that many have. But Siddhantically, no, we are to understand this exact point, that Jnana and Vairagya are necessary associates of bhakti, but they are not parts of bhakti. And if we try to cultivate them separately, we'll become lost. It won't help us.
Actually, it is stated that jnana, too much jnana and vairagya make the heart, this is
Hard.
to devotion. Make the heart
That's the one, that's the verse.
Yeah. Yes, bhakti is not the same. So therefore, Goswami says they are not just like Varnashram is not part of bhakti.
They are not part of the 64
They are
hours.
not part of this, exactly.
It's actually coming up. Oh yeah, there it is. It's like literally just below where I was talking. So we're about to read it.
What about quotes from читанчиков?
Vairagya vidya nija bhakti-yoga, shikshatam, Shri Krishna
How that's why I do this.
What is it? What's the English of it?
This is a verse composed by Sarvabhauma Acharya, who glorifies Mahaprabhu, who says, basically, all glories to Mahaprabhu, who came to give us his teachings, which are Vairagya vidya nija bhakti-yoga. It means bhakti-yoga, devotional service, supported by organization and knowledge.
Yeah. So exactly, supported by means that.
I'll find it in our photo.
Yeah, it means that they're necessary associates.
That's the real bhakti.
Yeah.
If bhakti is not supported by real knowledge and by vairagya, it will be samapa sampradaya.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. But eventually, as will become evident here, we're about to read it. Ultimately, they're actually rejected because devotional service doesn't depend on anything other than the desire to serve Krishna. So that's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That's what we're about to read.
Okay, so the verse is Vairagya vidya nija bhakti-yoga shikshartam ekam purusha purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Kripam Buddhir Yastam Aham Prapadye. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, that's a good qualifier there too. So it's not just detachment from the material world, it's detachment from what does not foster Krishna consciousness. So you won't get dry renunciation from that, right? He made sure to word it in such a way that
It's more like
you won't get distracted.
It's more like the 6 symptoms of surrender. Anukulana so rejection of all things that are unfavorable and acceptance of all favorable.
Yeah. So we have to become detached from the material world in order to become attached to Krishna. So therefore, vairagya is important. We have to know all of these things about Krishna. And therefore, we have to make sure that our knowledge isn't rooted in the material world. So these things are both important. But then once we reach that bhakti, the undivided, what is it? Undivided, unalloyed, and what was the other one? Unwavering. Unwavering love for Krishna. Then that's no longer. Anyway, so we'll just read that bit from Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu. It'll make it more clear. So in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 1, 2, 246 and 1, 2, 248 and 249, Srila Rupa Goswami explains. Some scholars argue that simply by following the principles of Varna and Ashram, one can gradually rise to the perfections reached by practicing devotional service. But this argument is not accepted by great authorities. Some scholars recommend that knowledge and renunciation are important factors for elevating oneself to devotional service. But actually, this is not a fact. Actually, the cultivation of knowledge or renunciation, which are favorable for achieving a footing in Krishna consciousness, may be accepted in the beginning, but ultimately they may also come to be rejected, for devotional service is dependent on nothing other than the sentiment or desire for such service. It requires nothing more than sincerity. It is the opinion of expert devotees that mental speculation and the artificial austerities of yoga practice may be favorable for becoming liberated from material contamination, but they will also make one's heart harder and harder. They will not help at all in the progress of devotional service. These processes are therefore not favorable for entering into the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Actually, Krishna consciousness, devotional service itself, is the only way of advancing in devotional life. Devotional service is absolute. It is both the cause and the effect. So here we have to be very mature about our understanding, because essentially, if we don't want to engage in this cultivation of knowledge and detachment from the material world, we'll just quote this. We'll say it has to happen naturally. I engage in bhakti by chanting Hare Krishna, which was prescribed by my guru, so it's authorized. And bhakti begets bhakti, nothing else. So you're wasting your time by studying the scriptures to cultivate knowledge and rejecting those things that you say are unfavorable to Krishna service, but whatever. I don't see them. So we can make arguments like this if we're not mature, if we don't have a proper understanding. And it's quoting Shastra, right? Logical. I'm quoting Shastra to show why I'm not spending so much time reading these books and giving up these so-called material attachments. How do I know the material attachments? I'm just going to keep chanting Hare Krishna because that's enough. Right? And conversely, you can have those who are very fanatic about, no. Jnana and Vairagya are important. They come with bhakti. They're necessary. And we can put too much emphasis on them. Attain knowledge for knowledge's sake and attain Vairagya for Vairagya's sake, not for Krishna's. And so we can be trapped on either extreme of this. And all of us are just quoting Shastra to support our positions. And they're both material positions, right? Different slopes for different folks. So to have a mature understanding of this, we actually have to understand Shastra through the acharyas, right? So it can seem confusing, it can seem contradictory, but there are no contradictions in Shastra, so we have to see how they're important. So we do need to pay attention to cultivation of transcendental knowledge, right? And detachment from the material world means anything that's not going to be favorable toward devotional growth. That's what we become detached from. That's where we apply the Vairagya. And when we do that, when it comes to the point where we reach pure bhakti, no problem. We're not even going to be considering these things. They're gone. Because pure bhakti means there's no attachment. So there's nothing to become detached from, right? And it's also pure knowledge. Satchidananda, that's your form. So there's no misplaced knowledge. There's no possibility of misplaced knowledge. So cultivation of knowledge to get to perfection is no longer an issue because you are in perfection. So there's no more knowledge to be gained. You're in full knowledge there. Full knowledge, full bliss, full eternity. Right? So we have to understand this. We have to give these things enough value that we take them seriously in our pursuit of bhakti because they are necessary associates. And then we also have to understand that they're not actually parts of bhakti. They help us get there. So we have to know the stepping stone principle. You have to use it because you need to get to the other side, but you also have to know when to get off. That part's not going to be a problem. You'll naturally know when to get off because you'll have pure bhakti. You don't look back, right? But some people try to get to that point too quickly, right? They're standing on this bank of the river. Their goal is that bank. But they say, since you're not going to actually stay on that stepping stone, don't even bother stepping on it. Because ultimately, it's not necessary. So why are you taking the step? Right? Well, because I want to go to the other side, that's why. Right? So we have to have a full understanding of it. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck on one side, or we're going to be building a house on stone and not getting to. We have to have the full understanding.
These people shouldn't be grihastas.
Shouldn't be grihastas.
Yeah, because it's also temporary.
I mean, yeah, we can make all sorts of arguments of what they shouldn't be doing.
I mean, they are Babaji.
Shouldn't be in the material world, but we are.
Yes, I just want to mention that there is a verse from the Cantra. Well, it says that if somebody, so the verse explains what is the required qualification to begin the process of bhakti-yoga. And it says that one shouldn't be too attached to material sanctification, neither too disgusted with them.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's qualified for bhakti. If he's too attached, he's not qualified for bhakti, he's qualified for karma. And in this case, we're talking about jnana, right? If he's too disgusted, then he's also not qualified for bhakti. He's qualified for jnana. So we don't want to be disqualified for bhakti by being too disgusted by it.
Yeah, because disgusted means averse.
Yes.
And we don't want to be averse, which is the opposite of attached. We want to be detached, which is the absence of attachment. Yeah, because averse means I'm attached in the negative direction, but it's still based on material. Very good. Okay. After thus describing the most exalted kind of devotional service, the author of the sutras now begins his description of upaya bhakti. So he explained pala bhakti, right? And I think we can all agree we're not there yet, right? So now we're going to understand, okay, let's hear the description of upaya bhakti so I can understand how to get to this pala bhakti, right? Because that's the goal. Right? So, upaya bhakti paranushilanam pratyaharas changam. A lot of familiar words there. Upaya bhakti, sadhana bhakti, has as its parts, number one, intent devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and two, renunciation of the material world. Footnote 2. In Śrī Īśopaniṣad, the intent devotion to the Lord is shown in mantras 15 to 18, and the renunciation of the material world is explained in mantras 1 through 3. Okay, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, this upaya bhakti alone is the resort of the conditioned souls. So there's no other resort for the conditioned souls than sadhana bhakti, upaya bhakti, right? If we are conditioned souls and we think that there is some other way that we're going to get to raganuga bhakti, pure devotional service, then we're fools. Upaya bhakti alone is the resort for the conditioned souls, right? The cultivation of divine love is the activity or the blissful inclination of the transcendental jivas. The renunciation of the material world is the reformative upliftment of the jivas from the dirt of worldliness. The renunciation is the very means of liberation, Without giving due attention to renunciation, there will be hardly any possibility of progress because of the material attachments of the jivas, right? So we have to give some attention to the renunciation because we have material attachments. They're anchoring us here, right? So we have to give some, as we're practicing positive bhakti, we should understand where are my attachments and then address those, right? So that we can engage in pure bhakti. Advancement in devotional service is often signified by symptoms such as tears, tremor, sweating, etc. But these signs on their own are not proof for genuine devotional emotions. They can be caused by material attachments as well, right? When we become afraid, sometimes there are tears, there's tremors, there's sweating, right? And that's just it's a material emotion. Sometimes there's tears, tremor, and sweating when we're in pain. That's also not transcendental. So if we're just going by these symptoms, then we may be confused. Therefore, unless the devotional cultivation is observed along with renunciation, these shadowy reflections, these symptoms, will occupy the heart, and the genuine divine love will not be manifested there. So we may see some sort of signs that we're making progress, but if renunciation isn't there, if we're actually not becoming renounced from the material world, then that is not genuine divine love, so it will not be manifesting. Since renunciation automatically follows all devotional activities, a question may be asked: what is the need of making distinction between renunciation and devotional activities, right? Why not just say it's the same thing? The answer is that although devotional activities include renunciation, not all types of renunciation include devotion, right? We already talked about that. There's dry renunciation, and it has nothing to do with bhakti. So therefore, they're not the same. Now, let us see what is the meaning of devotional culture, as explained in the next sutra, Sutra 35. Shravana Kirtana Dini Paranushilano Payogitvat Pratyangani. Hearing and chanting of the divine narrations, etc., are the feature of devotional performances which help the cultivation of divine love. So these are the things that we can do that will cultivate divine love. Hearing and chanting about the pastimes of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada stresses the importance of hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord in his purport to Śrī Īśopaniṣad, Mantra 13. The simple way to worship the Supreme Lord in this age of disturbance is to hear and chant about his great activities. The mental speculators, however, think that the activities of the Lord are imaginary. Therefore, they refrain from hearing of them and invent some word jugglery without any substance to divert the attention of the innocent masses of people. Instead of hearing the activities of Lord Krishna, such pseudo-spiritual masters advertise themselves by inducing their followers to sing about them. In modern times, the number of such pretenders has increased considerably, and it has become a problem for the pure devotees of the Lord to save the masses of people from the unholy propaganda of these pretenders and pseudo-incarnations. This is still going on. I had a job one time, and my boss, I'm not going to say who he was following, but his family followed an Indian pseudo-guru. And so he was familiar with Krishna and Arjuna and the other Pandavas and like that. He grew up reading Mahabharata. And so when I met him for my job interview, and he asked me what was with the name Charu Chandra, and I explained it to him. And he said, "Oh, I love Krishna." He said, "What are you talking about it?" And he said, "So, what tradition are you?" And I said, "I'm from ISKCON, the Hare Krishna." He goes, "Oh yeah, my guru loves you guys." And I said, "Oh, that's nice." And he said, "Yeah." He says this is the quote from his guru. "Yeah, I love the Hare Krishnas. All they do is sit around chanting my names."
Very good. we didn't know.
So
Little did we know.
little did we know that we're chanting the names of this. No, so he actually considers himself to be the personification of Radha Krishna. And that's what he tells his followers. So this is a common thing, right? Such pseudo-spiritual masters advertise themselves by inducing their followers to sing about them. In modern time, and so in other words, but they'll actually say, don't worry about this Hare Krishna mantra, just, even though it's glorifying me already, but now you should glorify me more specifically, with these particular songs, right? And in modern times, the number of such pretenders has increased considerably, right? And some of them aren't even in a line where they're saying they're God. They're just, saying that I'm the greatest, and so you should follow me. They don't address God. They just say I'm the greatest. So you should just follow me. I'm the best there is. Like that. So it's become a problem for the pure devotees of the Lord to save the masses of people from unholy propaganda of these pretenders and pseudo-incarnations, right? Because that's our duty as aspiring Vaishnavas, to also repay our debt to our spiritual masters by also taking up their mission, by also trying to save the masses. And so this is becoming a problem when these pseudo-gurus and pretenders become very popular. The Upanishads indirectly draw our attention to the primeval Lord Śrī Krishna, but the Bhagavad Gita, which is the summary of all the Upanishads, directly points to Śrī Krishna. Therefore, one should hear about Krishna as he is by hearing from the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, and in this way one's mind will gradually be cleansed of all contaminated things. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:17 says, by hearing of the activities of the Lord, the devotee draws the attention of the Lord. Thus, the Lord, being situated in the heart of every living being, helps the devotee by giving him proper directions. Bhagavad Gita 10:10 confirms this. Dadami bhakti-yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. The Lord's inner direction cleanses the devotee's heart of all contamination produced by the material modes of passion and ignorance. Non-devotees are under the sway of passion and ignorance. One who is in passion cannot become detached from material hankering, and one who is in ignorance cannot know what he is or what the Lord is. Thus, when one is in passion or ignorance, there is no chance for self-realization. However much one may play the part of a religionist, if one's in passion and ignorance, there's no chance for self-realization. For a devotee, the modes of passion and ignorance are removed by the grace of the Lord. In this way, the devotee becomes situated in the quality of goodness, the sign of a perfect Brahmana. Anyone can qualify as a Brahmana if he follows the path of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master. Sometimes we hear the statement that, well, since it doesn't matter what modes we're in, and it's Krishna consciousness is for everyone, so Krishna consciousness can lift us out of these modes. So all you have to do is whatever you're doing, you just add Krishna, right? We've heard all of these sayings. So is it important to pay attention to, whether or not we're actually influenced by passion and ignorance? Do we just not chant Hare Krishna and it just automatically becomes cleansed? It kind of says that here, right? For devotees, the mode of passion and ignorance are removed by the grace of the Lord, right? I was talking about in Bhagavad Gita 10:10 that the Lord is situated in the heart, gives instructions. Yes, tell us, Prabhu.
But devotee means you have to be engaged in devotional service.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, how you are devotee?
Okay.
Bhakti-yoga vichārana, bhakti-yoga. If you are influencing the constantly engaged in bhakti, then
Unflinchingly
you
and
are
constantly.
above the monks.
Oh, so unflinchingly and constantly. So maybe it does matter if we're in the modes of passion. But Krishna's going to do that automatically, right?
This is what means automatic.
Oh, automatically if we're unflinchingly and constantly engaged. So what you're saying is there's no chance of self-realization, however much one may play the part of religionist, if there's passion and ignorance involved. Well, that changes my whole worldview then, right? Because sometimes this is how we justify or try to make ourselves feel better about our position. I'm in the mode of passion, okay, but I'm using it in Krishna service, right? How about that argument? Mode of passion means I'm motivated to get things done. I build temples and I make sure that management is going on. Kshatriyas have to have a mode of passion in order to make things happen. So does that mean that a Kshatriya or a temple manager can't be self-realized? Anyone? Yeah.
But even Kshatriyas will ultimately retire to Vanaprastha, for example.
Yeah. Plus, we can do these things in a detached way, right? So that's where the vairagya comes in. So we may be engaging these things, but if we're doing them in a detached way, if the love, which is the inherent nature of the soul, is actually focused on Krishna and not focused on, I'm getting these results for me. No, these results are for Krishna. I'm just using this nature that I temporarily have in order to make these things, successfully happen in Krishna service. So then you're not influenced by the mode of passion, you're utilizing the mode of passion. So if the vairagya is there, the true vairagya, and not the dry renunciation, right? Then it actually is devotional service. And then there will be self-realization. Because then it's purified. We went over. Anything else on this? Yeah.
But if we have this consciousness, means also that pure goodness is prevailing, or because there might be something about the passion which is probably to.
Yeah, so transcendence, so detachment. We use everything in Krishna service. So even when we sleep, sleep is mode of ignorance. Sometimes we have to take some sort of medicine, also mode of ignorance. But we use it for Krishna service. So we sleep, but we only sleep a certain amount, right? If we sleep too much, then that's influenced by the mode of ignorance, right? But if we sleep the right amount, then we're utilizing the mode of ignorance so that we can continue to serve. Same thing with passion, right? In order to get anything done, there has to be some sort of passion here in the material world, right? There's still activity in the spiritual world, but there's no mode of passion in the spiritual world, right? So in transcendence, there's still activity. It's just not mode of passion. So when the love is placed not on material nature, but actually on Krishna completely, there's no more tie to the material world. So that what may look like mode of passion, mode of ignorance, is actually transcendence. But the question is, how do we not fall into the trap of actually being influenced by passion and ignorance and considering that, no, I'm actually on the transcendental platform because I'm chanting Hare Krishna and I'm engaging in service? How do we avoid falling into that trap? You don't know how to avoid falling into that trap? The point is that in the spiritual world, there's still activity, right? And it's not influenced by the mode of passion. Here in the material world, you want to get something done, there has to be some mode of passion. Because it's all about us and how to get it for us. Those who are engaging their tendencies in Krishna's service are no longer acting on the material platform, they're acting on the transcendental platform. And so you wouldn't say that they're influenced by the mode of passion, you'd say they're engaging that, but it's in transcendence. So how do we not fall into the trap of, if we're actually influenced by the modes of material nature, but we're considering that since I'm a devotee and I'm chanting, maybe I'm on this platform where I'm actually in transcendence, and this isn't the mode of passion at all, I'm just utilizing these things in Christian service. How do we avoid falling into that trap? Because that's important, because otherwise we have a lot of people who think they're transcendental and they're actually, yes, Michelle.
The sign of it is that one is detached from material matter.
Yeah, that's the point that was here. That these things, knowledge and detachment, they are. Is it 2 pages back? Yeah, they're necessary associates of bhakti, but they're not parts of bhakti. So we have to see that we're actually becoming renounced from the material world. Where is that love? Is that love actually towards Krishna, or is that love towards something in the material world? And now it's coming off as kindness or generosity or appreciation, like that, the reflection. So in order to realize if we're dealing with the reflection, the shadow, or the actual substance, we have to see where that love is actually placed. And so the knowledge has to be cultivated, and there has to be renunciation, but not independently cultivated. They have to be in conjunction with bhakti. Otherwise, they can be confused. All right. So we'll talk more about this on Thursday, because it's an important subject, and we've gone over. Okay. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Sri Tattva-sutra ki jai.